Well, hello and welcome to the Super Connector Show, where I'm delighted to be joined by Simon Woodroffe, who is the founder of the Sushi restaurant chain and also the YOTEL brand, and was also one of the original dragons on BBC Dragon's Den. Simon, thank you very much for joining me today. I'm delighted to be doing this with you, so really appreciate it. How are you doing?
And I'm delighted too. I'm talking to you from my farm in Thailand, and this is my home actually. So
Yeah.
absolute pleasure to be here, Paul.
No, really, really appreciate it. So I know we talked a bit before we went live that I first, well, apart from Yo Sushi and Dragon's Den, I first heard you speak at Young Entrepreneur of the Year Awards way back in 2011, and I was just really struck by what an amazing public speaker you are, and very, very charismatic, and shared some fantastic insights and pearls of wisdom to other business owners. I know that's something that you're really keen to do more of, aren't you? You want to give back and
Always, yeah.
you want to help others, which is why you've got this fantastic book, Your Man, which is due out on the 4th of June, which we'll talk about. So why have you written this now? Why have you wanted to bring this book out?
Well, I think that the sort of key part of that question is now,
Uh-huh.
and I actually had a publishing deal about 10, 15 years ago, and I'm just very pleased that I waited because it's been a sort of cap on my career to some. I'm still doing things, but it's been a cap on my career, and it's been a real pleasure to write it. Just to remember, or what an adventure the whole thing has been. So I guess, and I guess, you get to an age at some point we're all going to go. Nobody gets away free from that one,
Mhm.
and to be able to kind of look back over a career and everything that's happened and the people I've been with and the near misses and how I nearly fell off and what could have gone wrong. I mean, so many things could have gone wrong along the way. And I often ask myself the question, would I have been able to pick myself up and start again? And I don't really know the answer to that, but
Mhm.
that is the reason that I've
Yeah.
written it now.
Yeah. Well, I'm about halfway through the book, so I'm onto the Yo Sushi story. Launching the restaurants now.
Okay.
But
Okay.
what I love, you talk about an adventure. It really is an adventure. Like I think the Yo Sushi and Yotel, a lot of that, and Dragon's Dens, a lot of that's very well documented. But the career you had before that, I didn't know anything about what you'd done when you came out of school, how you'd been a theatre manager in the West End. You've been a roadie and a stage designer for an amazing bands like Ozzy Osbourne and yeah, you name it. I've got a long list here, like Wham. Who else we got here? You can say ABBA, Queen, Alice Cooper, Rod Stewart, Led Zeppelin, Adam Ant, Brian Ferry. Huge names that you've worked with over the years. And then you moved into being a TV executive as well. So you've reinvented yourself multiple times, and you've moved into new directions. It seems like with no real plan about that, but you've still just seen an opportunity and you've just ran with it, which is what I think most entrepreneurs
I
do.
think I think that's exactly right. I mean, you've done a very good summary of my early life, uh, but it was the bit that you've left out is the crash and burns, because I think when Madonna was young, they
Mhm.
always used to say she was the mistress of reinvention. She reinvented herself for every show. And
Mhm.
when I look back over that early part of my life, I reinvented myself in all the things that you've just described.
Mhm.
Um, but very often the reinvention happened because things went wrong. And when I look back at some of the things I did, certainly the stage design side, I'm very proud of all that stuff and the people I worked with. And I was there at the very beginning of a touring industry that took shows out all over the world, and not just designing things that look good to an audience, but could travel around the world.
Hmm.
I remember Rod Stewart was the first really big show I ever did. He knew what was going on. He said, I showed him these visuals of what we were going to do in the days before computer visuals. We had to make models and do renderings. And he said it's what I've always wanted. And he said, if
Yeah.
it can travel, let's do it, because
Hmm.
that was the days as that whole business grew up. But yeah, I had a lot of near misses along the way, as you
Hmm.
read, and I reinvented myself. And was it with a plan? Not really. I left school with two O levels. They were in those days, GCSEs, and I was at Marlborough College, where Princess Kate went. The Queen to be.
Hmm.
So I had a privileged background, and we didn't have a lot of money in the family, but I did. My parents, God bless them, scraped and saved, and sent me there. And I left there when I was 16, and that was. So yes, it's been an adventure, that the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I think like you say, you maybe you could argue you had a privileged upbringing, or you had sort of moved to the right circles, or the family definitely was quite well off part of the family, not necessarily your immediate family, but your wife. Yeah.
You remember, you're passing the test on having read my book. But yeah, you're right. That was the issue, is that we had this sort of semi-aristocratic family, and some of them were really rich. But my dad was in the army, and we
Mhm.
weren't. So it always felt as if we were scraping and saving to kind of keep up with the what I call the double-barrel Joneses, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, and then we lived abroad all my life. So when I came back and left, you know, the school, my parents had sort of wanted me to be part of all that sort of scene. And suddenly, and actually, I'm not ashamed of it any these days. I did some drug dealing very early on, and I went to prison for 3 months.
Hmm.
So you
Hmm.
could imagine what that was like for
Yeah.
that family. It was like beyond their ken. And they'd lived overseas most of their life in Singapore and Germany. So they came back and they were out of their depth about how to help me. So
Hmm.
I had to forge my own way. And I was one of those kids at 16, totally lost, if there are young
Hmm.
people listening. I really was. And I got my first job through an advert in the back of the Stage newspaper, which I randomly bought in some little newsagent. I just saw it on the Stage. I said, that looks good. Have a look at that. And in the back it said staff wanted professional. And I got a job in the West End as a stage manager, very early days of fringe theatre.
Hmm.
And I got a break. And then everything kind of happened from that. And one thing led to another. And I'm
Yeah.
always saying to kids, the thing to do is, if you're not sure what to do, is just get out and do anything.
Hmm.
And I think what I did, but what I always really advocate for kids is, and actually for anybody in this world, in life, in anything, is to over deliver. That's what I
Yeah.
think. I mean, people go, oh, well, what am I going to get out of it? And I know that when people over deliver to me, I want to put my arm around them, pay them, give them more, keep them, whatever. But it's
Hmm.
those people that you're always looking for as an employee. So as an employer, so as an employee, I say just over deliver in whatever you do, regardless of what you get paid. You get ripped off occasionally, but so what? In the long run of things, it works. That really does work.
No, that's good advice there, because there's definitely people who will do the minimum, or they think, well, why should I do that if I'm only going to get paid minimum wage, or I'm not going to get paid anything extra?
Exactly.
Well, even myself, I think, like, whenever I've moved into a new role, I've usually done something for free voluntarily outside of work to get me in a position where I've been mixing with certain people that, or gaining skills or experience that have allowed me to move into that new role. Or I've taught myself a new
Well,
skill.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm talking about. And to be a likable person. I don't know you very well, but my first impression is you're a likable person. You're not
Good.
overrun with ego, me, and all of that.
Uh-huh.
And if you can be a likable person, you talk about charismatic, but if you can be a likable person, and that takes practice and it's a skill to do.
Mhm.
In a way, I call it acting as if almost, you're acting the part. in life. Obviously, you want to be authentic, but you're acting the part of being you.
Yeah.
And that to develop that, that's why that book all those years ago was How to Win Friends and Influence People, was
Yeah.
not about how to do business. It was how to have the personality. And I think that over delivering is a key point in that.
Mm-hmm.
And, and listening, of course, is the other one. And then just doing things. I have this little secret thing that I do, which is when I'm trying to help somebody or do something with somebody or do something jointly, is in my 60s vernacular, you know, way back in those days, when we used to do peace signs and mean them. I want to blow people's minds. I want to surprise people so much. So they go home to their wife or their friends and say, this guy is working for me. You wouldn't believe what he did today. But boom, and if you can get those points going, it's
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable in business. Much better than saying, well, I'm not being paid enough to do that, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you do this, do more. And
Yeah.
if you're not that sort of person naturally, that takes a bit of acting to play that part. But the
Mm-hmm.
reward is when you see the drop jaw, which is like, well, that was good.
Yeah.
That's what I.
Yeah. Well, I've got two teenage kids, and they're amazing kids. But I'm trying to get this across to them at the moment. Where my son in particular, I don't think the penny's dropped with him yet. That for
Yeah,
him
well,
to do.
he has to learn from experience or
Yeah,
from somebody who's not his dad.
I know exactly. Like, I've got to be mindful of that. That like just because I know lots and I've got a great deal of experience, it comes across as a lecture from me. So
Yeah,
I've
but
got
you're the dad. They don't believe that.
no.
They want to get it from themselves. And
Yeah, he's got to find out himself. Yeah. So now that you covered a lot there, but I'm just going to talk briefly about you. Well, maybe not briefly about your childhood, because
sure,
you did have a difficult time, didn't you, at school in particular? And you talked about being
sure.
lost. You definitely you hated school, and you really didn't do well there, and couldn't wait to get away. But you still. You say I think in there you talked about how you were very confident though, or you acted confident, and you were a bit of a sort of joker and like sort of life and soul of the party sort of thing. So where did that come from? Do you think? Did you feel like you just had to
Okay, from my dad,
overcompensate from?
the brigadier, my dad, who used to, he's one of those geezers who, well, he wasn't a geezer at all. He was a chap, and he used to wear a handkerchief, one of those ones in his
Yeah.
check. But he was a sort of, he was always, bravado and bigged himself up all the time and, talked to anybody. And, some of that is useful, but actually you want to be a good listener as well. And he wasn't that great of a listener. So I guess that was it. But yes, I think I did have a difficult childhood in many ways. I don't blame them for it. They had their issues going on, no doubt. But, I've met people who have had very happy childhoods and actually don't really do an awful lot with their life. And I've also met people who, like me, who had kind of difficult times as a child and went on to, to really do a lot and to be very happy and success in the widest form of that word success. And I always call it a bit of grit in the oyster. So, I mean, if you're listening there and you are one of those, what can I call it? Got a chip in your shoulder, a bit chippy or angry or, or whatever. You could be on the right track. That's not such a thing to have. That gets you up and going. I'll bloody show them, but
Yeah.
you've got to have a good act to be able to make some friends along the way. I mean, you don't have to be friends with people all the time. I've met people who are just, are pretty awful, actually, not people you'd really want to be friends with at all. And they've done well. So there's no formula. It's finding your own formula that works about how you can, like I said earlier, how you can win friends and influence people. That's what you're really after.
Yeah, no, that's good. Again, really great advice. I mean, your book's full of great advice, actually, but like when I was reading it, it did resonate quite a bit with me because I haven't had the same childhood, obviously, and the same upbringing or anything. I've had a good childhood and a good upbringing, but there's probably a bit in me, not a chip on my shoulder, but always feeling like I have to prove myself and always have to like try harder and never quite, even though I've had a lot of people would say I've been very successful and done amazing things like you have as well. Never quite satisfied with what I've done and always worried about money and never having quite enough money. And it's not all about money. I want to do things that have an impact and excite me and excite others. But I always feel like there's a lot more to do and there's a lot more to
Well,
achieve.
I mean, I'd say that, as you've just described, is a very good example of what I'm talking about. You know, that it wasn't all easy, and you had something to prove. And why have you got up and done all the things that you've done is to do with that.
Yeah.
And there's one line um, that I really like, which is along the lines of that if you do what I'm talking about and go out and act as if you're the best part of the person you can be and learn all of those things, that, you know, some really magical, I say magical, I don't want to be too wishy-washy about it, but, you know, some really great things happen. And I like the line that, you know, fear of financial insecurity will leave you. And I'm sure that a lot of people are missing it. I certainly, as you described it, that fear of financial insecurity, um, you know, unless you've got some big qualification as an accountant or a lawyer, and I wouldn't want to have that life myself, um, although it's a good training for being an entrepreneur, that's for sure. Um, um, you know, unless you've got a big salary job and you can see the rest of your life mapped out, which I don't think is really that good a formula for great happiness and fulfillment, then, you know, having that grit in the oyster is a good way to get out and get yourself going and do things. And I always used to think it was special people who went out and did things like, well, like you and I've done, Paul, and started businesses and done things. I always thought that they were sort of special people. But actually, mostly I've discovered they're ordinary Joes, but somebody who's got a niggle who wants to do something and is
Mm.
willing to put sweat in and think about what the solution is. Because I mean, one of the things that goes on in my mind when I've got anything to do, and I've got a few things on at the moment. Actually, I've been talking about today, in fact, this resort we're building out here, is that there is, when you don't know the solution, and I don't know the solution to a few of the things that I'm trying to do, is you've got to wait, and there is a solution to everything. And
Mhm.
actually, what I'm doing today, actually, I've been putting in calls to people and saying, look, I'm not quite sure what to do on this situation. What do you think?
Mhm.
And people love to give you advice. And it's
Yeah.
amazing. You ask right, you can listen. And, you know, very often the advice isn't that great because they've got another issue of their own that they're, you know, thinking of it from their point of view. So you can filter it. You don't have to take that. And I never, ever ask someone, should I do it or shouldn't I do it? But
Mhm.
I do what other people say,
Yeah.
and from that take action. And there is a solution to however stuck. There's people listening and they feel stuck. However stuck you are, there is always a solution. And often, usually, the solution is to do with a change within you, not a change with other people behaving differently,
Mm.
because you can't do that. And sometimes it's difficult and painful and hard work and, you know, quite a steep learning curve to get there.
Yeah.
But as I always say, you know, the harder you work, the more that you sweat, the more you go through, the luckier you get. And
Yeah.
that is the truth, I would say.
Yeah. No, totally. I think, yeah, I do agree that like if it's humanly possible, you can make anything happen, can't you? Like if you speak to the right people, there is always a way. Um, and
Yeah, or not even the right people, you know, because people will be listening and go, oh, well, I don't know how to get to the right people. It's all okay for you, you know, you can do it. But you can.
yeah,
And you have to be an actor to get there, to
yeah,
have the confidence to say that. And you know, fear comes into it, shame. You know, I'm embarrassed. I don't want to make a fool of myself.
ego as
But
well. People don't want to. People are being
you've got to,
successful. Don't want
that's right. Yeah, Richard Branson always says, when you have a fall, and you've got to have falls, when you have a fall, you got to dust yourself off, get up again and dust yourself off,
yeah,
regroup.
yeah,
And it's really true. But it's that thing of failing a lot of, how many times I used to have this plan I'd say I'm gonna have 6 failures today. And and I'd come back when I got 6 in my bag, and I'd punch the air going, yes, call it positive. But that was my little game I played with myself in
yeah.
order to get through those difficult times.
Mm-hmm. So we'll talk a bit about your sushi at the moment, but I know, or maybe there's a bit in your book where you talked about how you used to be known as a steamroller, but that was maybe more in your TV career. And but you also say, like, sometimes when you want to bring something to life, like a new idea, a new business venture, you have to have that drive, and that you have to push, and you have to make things happen, and you have to. Otherwise, no one else is going to do it. But being able to let go or bring other people in is not easy. Once you get things going, that's something you've learned along the way, isn't it? That
Yeah, I think in a short sense, look, everybody's got their own way of doing things. You find your own way, but my way has been megalomaniac control
yeah,
at the outset of any venture.
yeah,
I even had partners mostly. Sometimes I have, but megalomaniac control. And that's what Steve Jobs used to do. He would say, "I want, watch me. I'm making money. I know how to do this. I want this done by the end of the day. That's it. Finito. If you don't like it, you can piss off." He's a bit like that. And, megalomaniac control, my way or the highway. I would also listen to people and take things on board, and I really would do that. But in the end, I'd decide megalomaniac control in the early days, maybe the first, whatever early is, first 1, 2, 3 years. And then the key for me has always been to completely let go, not just a
mm-hmm.
bit, and that's what a lot of people who start things find it very hard to do. Let
Mm-hmm.
go and let others do things their way, not your way necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And don't check up on every little tiny bit, but let them motivate them and make sure they're rewarded properly and they have a proper goal to get to, and set them free to do it. That said, I met a guy in Bali years ago who was a zillionaire of some sort, but in oil, I think he was in. And he was actually a very nice guy. And he really shocked me at the time, and I remember, because he said, one thing I've learned is that the time to fire somebody is the first time you think about it.
All right. Well. Mm-hmm.
And that's very true. The time to make a change is the first time you think about something. And often we're too busy in our daily lives putting the fires out or trying to survive. And the first time you think about something. So I'm very impulsive like that. I will make changes and do things very impulsively, knowing that I can always correct them later.
Yeah.
And difficult as it is to fire people in this day and age. So that's one part of it. And then the other side is being able to say no, being able to
Mm-hmm.
focus down on one thing. And you know this from having read Yo Man, is that I was all over the place. I was always coming up with a new idea and a new this and a new that. And what I have learned over the years is focus down on what you're doing
Mm-hmm.
and just stick to one thing. And a lot of times, your exception was you've done a lot of different businesses and things to help other people. But when I hear people go, "Oh, I've got 20 businesses on the go and this, that, and the other," there's not many of them who really make a success of that. It's the people
No.
who focus on one thing, get that going, and then, like me, move on to the next one and let others roll it out.
Yeah.
Add
Yeah.
my time.
Well, no, that's again great advice. But I think so. For the past 10 years, I've had my own business for the past 10 years, right? And the vehicle for what I do has maybe changed, whether it's events or online content or blogs or videos or podcasts or whatever. But it's consistent what I've done. It's always been the same type of thing that I've done over the last 10 years and even the 15 years before that when I've had jobs doing it. So I am focused on what I'm doing and the mission and the purpose of what I'm doing, but the way I do it maybe changes over time. But definitely, that's why I love talking to you now, right? And I love reading your book, and I read lots of books and biographies and listen to podcasts. Have you heard of one called Founders by David Senra?
I haven't heard that.
No.
Is that a good one?
So what he does, he's obsessed with biographies. So he reads biographies of famous or successful entrepreneurs, industrialists, pioneers, and then he summarizes them and pulls out the key points. But when you listen but when you listen to them, it's so consistent how often they talk about focus, having that single-minded focus on what they're doing, minimize distractions, and just so sure of what they're doing. And they're always really frugal as well, and try and keep control of the costs. And they always surround themselves with good people who are part of the mission and support what they're doing. But yeah, it's interesting how it's the same things that make people successful. Yeah. Let's talk about your sushi, because you've had that successful career. I think it's. I've got a puppy scratching at the door here, so if you can hear a puppy. You'd had your career in theatre. You've been a roadie. You've been in the music industry as well, and you had a lot of success. I think the people that you worked with. It was like 200 or so sets that you've been involved in designing. I know were you directly involved or not, but your company did the Live Aid stage as well in 1985, which is just mega.
We did all those things, that's for sure. But
incredible.
I never made any real money.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So you've had all this success.
My first million.
Yeah, you'd had all this success, but did you still not feel successful despite all doing?
I felt, I was quite pleased with some of the things I'd done, but I hadn't made £1 million, and that's it really. It's making that. Even in those days, that was even more money. But to make the first million, that is the thing, and it's a doable thing. And as you say, not spending. I mean, I still, even to today, I wouldn't say I'm tight. John Peel always used to say about Rod Stewart. He said he's the sort of geezer. You go into a pub, and you say, "Would you like a pint?" And he said, "Yeah." "And could I have a Scotch egg as well, please?" And I wouldn't say I'm tight in that respect, but I'm very sensible in money, and I still don't like to go and spend loads of money on myself. I do travel business class, but I don't have private jets, or I have had yachts in my time, but I don't. I've traveled fairly lightly through life, and that feels good. Certainly when you're starting business. Some reason I've just clicked off here.
I can still see you. I can still hear you. It's all right.
Yeah, let me just see if I can get you back, because I have got this machine set on focus, so it shouldn't have done that. But let me just see if I can just get that. Do not disturb is on. That's weird. Okay, well, that's good. So let's see if I can get you back here.
Well, I can still see and hear you, but you just can't see me.
Good. All right. Yeah. Okay. There, I got you back again.
Yay,
okay. What were we on to?
Just talking about how the aim was to be a millionaire, basically, and even though to
make the first million, exactly.
Yeah, and there is a bit that I love it actually at the beginning of the book where you open with that, how you go into the cash point and you've got 2 million in your bank account and you were so happy in that moment, and then you got the guy behind you. You got him to look at. Is that true? how did you feel that? Was it just was it mostly a relief that you finally got to that point?
Well, it's a relief. First of all, it was when I first made £1 million, it was a relief to have got it because it's something I'd always wanted to do.
Hmm.
Um, but then there's a form of madness takes place if you're not careful.
Uh-huh.
And my form of madness was, I met people. Then of course you meet people who are much richer than you are, and you
Hmm.
feel inadequate. And I do remember thinking at the time that is absolutely mad. I got more than I'd hoped for, and I'm still thinking, oh, it's not enough.
Yeah.
But and obviously I did go on, and I made a great deal more than that.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, it's the other thing is if ever, you are ever lucky enough, and I hope you will be, all of you, because it's can happen to anybody if you put the work in, is that once you do make some money, the next thing is you're worried about losing it, and that is a very real issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to lose it on thinking you're a magician and thinking your projects. When I was on Dragons then, you
Hmm.
know, there was a kind of sense among the dragons, oh, we know what we're doing, we really do know what we're doing. And I knew, and I got everybody to agree eventually, between privately anyway, that we don't really know what we're doing. We go into a new business and we've got some experience of the previous ones, but we're not magicians and we certainly don't know every business. And the person who usually knows the most about the business is the one who's doing it themselves.
Hmm.
So, that's why I say never ask people's advice, mine included, and listen and steal or whatever you will, borrow what you can learn from people. And I like your story about that guy who reads every single possible biography because I've read them all as well, and
Yeah.
the engineering books, and the sailing books, and the adventure books. Um, and steal from all those people and take what you can and leave the rest,
Yeah.
um, because that is useful.
Exactly. Well, it's ultimately it's your business, isn't it? So you have to make the decision. But yeah, like you can still.
Yeah,
I encourage people to do that to listen to other people. But they don't have to do what other people tell them to do, and that's
definitely not.
yeah,
Definitely
definitely.
not.
Um, I think the other thing, well, we're talking a bit more about money. Just in the, did you feel like you were when you were on that push to be successful? That was the driving factor, and was it so because of your upbringing and you
Well,
maybe going
Yo Sushi, I was going to open in 1 year. And I
right?
was very lucky because if I'd opened Yo Sushi at the end of 1 year, I'd opened some little two-bit sushi
Yeah.
shop in a corner place. And it was in the second year that I developed all the things, the robots, the big site,
Yeah.
the this, that, and the other. And that's exactly the right thing to do.
Mhm.
Um, so I can't remember what the question you are, what the subject was.
Uh,
What was I saying?
yeah. Well, hold that thought a minute. What I was what I was getting at. I suppose it was a clumsy question. Was about because of the family that and your upbringing. Because you could see wealth around you and you could touch it and experience some of it, but you didn't feel like you were quite there yet. Was that the driving factor to?
That's exactly
Yeah.
what you were talking
Uh-huh.
about. Yeah, yeah. No, the motivation. Um, I don't think that making money can be a motivation that lasts for,
No.
whatever a working man's week is, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week it was with
Yeah.
me. I don't think just making money. Sushi, once I got it further along, the real motivation, I wanted to see what it would look like.
Mm.
I wanted it to be finished. I wanted to open the doors and see people coming in through the door. That was
Mm.
what the excitement was for me.
Mm.
The idea that I was going to be a millionaire and get lots and lots and lots of money, um, it wasn't foremost in my mind. The idea that I would survive and people would come and people would say it was good and I could keep the thing going, and indeed maybe just have one restaurant from which I'd be able to earn a living for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
That would have been a pretty good result for me.
Mhm.
So, no, I don't think making a ton of money, I'm sure it is for some people, but for me, that's never been the motivation. It's always been you have an idea in your head and I want to see it happen. I want to
Mm.
see I want to see make it happen and go, yeah, I did that. Um,
Yeah.
and not to lose money. I never got out of bed in order to get super rich. I
Mhm.
did get out of bed early and work very hard not to be poor. And I think my
Mhm.
motivation has always been not to be poor rather than to be very rich.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you'll have a different one. That is the answer. That's the answer, I think, to what you're asking.
Yeah, no, I like that because I've definitely I spent a brief time working in recruitment and I liked it, but I didn't love it. And I love what I'm doing now and much more
Yeah,
because the people that I was around, they just weren't my kind of people. They were just focused about money, like, and
yeah.
for what purpose? They just wanted to buy things with the money, but they had no substance really to what they were doing other than
Do you know,
just.
I've been several times, quite a lot. I've been in bars late at night after, a few drinks or whatever, and I have heard people who probably more wealthy than me working in the city, dealing with financials, just buying and selling gold or whatever it is, futures. And they're going, oh, they're going, you've done something. You've actually made something. You've built something and employed people and done something. All I've ever done is made money and I'm not happy. And I must admit, I did think to myself, well, maybe there's something in that.
Mhm,
There's the happiness that I've felt, facetiously, I tell people, if anybody tells you that money doesn't make you happy, they're lying, because it did make me feel quite good when I got some money the first time. But I think they're probably right, that the real is the achievement of being able to do something and
mhm.
to get something started, make it actually happen. That
Yeah,
is, that's a pretty damn good feeling. And if that can then make money, or certainly not lose money, that is pretty cool as well. Yes,
yeah,
that sort of sense of, you know, I'm a capable person. If you're doing exams at school, if you're younger and you're doing exams at school, and then you hand in your work for your GCSEs, your A levels, a university degree, and then there's somebody else judges whether you've passed or not, you know, you're really giving away your power, aren't you? But
mhm,
if you start yourself and you know that you've done it, and you know that people have walked in through the door, nobody can argue with that. You've
mhm,
done it.
mhm. Yeah,
And that is a much better feeling, that feeling of self-esteem that comes from believing that you've done a good job.
yeah. No, that I definitely that's what I've got out of doing what I do is just the feeling of having an idea and bring that idea to life and
Exactly, exactly.
making it
Seeing what it looks
successful.
like in reality.
Yeah, it's very satisfying doing that.
Yeah,
Um,
it
and
is
and yeah,
exactly.
is it being your own boss and sort of being able to work where I want when I want with who I want is amazing feeling.
All of that is great. And here we are, you and I sitting here sort of celebrating it all. But what we shouldn't forget to tell people is that, that comes with pain as
Yeah,
well,
there's
because
a
it comes
price. Yeah, it's
with
not
sleepless
easy.
nights and worry and embarrassment and fear and terror even along
Yeah,
the way.
hmm,
And it's not easy. It's certainly hard work.
yeah.
It's not easy, and it's not. Yeah, exactly. So
No, It's
it's
hard
not
for
a
the people. It's hard for
not
the
an
people.
easy path.
No,
Yeah,
it's hard for the people around you as well, isn't it? So that's another thing that
yeah,
resonated with
that's
me.
true as
So
well.
you obviously uh, it's never nice, but you were married and you got divorced and you had a young child and I've been married and divorced and it's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? You know,
Well, there's all of that.
it
Yeah,
happens all.
relationships that come and go, come and go.
Yeah,
I'm very good friends with my wife, and my daughter's grown up to be a, um, she actually went to university and she went to business school. I thought, well, I said that's going to knock the entrepreneur out of you, but she's actually entrepreneurial. She's got a
yeah,
little business of her own, and she's doing things, and I
that's
guess
good.
she picked it up along the way.
Yeah, no, that's good. I've
They
was
fuck
been,
you up, your mum and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They
yeah,
add a
no,
few. There was this. I can't remember that thing. They give you all the faults they had and add a few one just for you.
Yeah, no, yeah, there's definitely a lot of truth in that. But I know it's like it's not easy. I mean, I was married for 13 years, but we split up 6 years ago. But we're friends, you know. We and the kids have been the
Yeah.
priority.
All
And
right. Well done,
it's
you.
great. But and that I'm really proud that we've been able to do that. But definitely, I don't blame. There was no real fault on either side. But I think she wasn't fully bought into the entrepreneur lifestyle. She didn't really
Yeah.
like me doing what I was doing, but
Yeah.
it was in me
Go and
already.
get a job, Paul.
Yeah, but it was in me already before I met her. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing.
And
You
you're
can't.
going, well, you knew what you were getting when you married me.
No, but like I just never felt really comfortable or settled working in corporate environments or what I was doing up until that point. But then much happier doing my own thing and I had an amazing life. Very
Good.
happy.
And and look, there's people listening going, yeah, well, I've got a really good job and I really like my job. What are you on
Good,
about?
good.
And
Yeah,
spot on for you. That's what I
yeah,
always say. Absolutely go for it. If you're doing something you like, you're working for somebody, you've got some freedom within the business, definitely. We've all got our own ways of doing things. It's just finding your way.
yeah. No, totally. So, let's go back to your sushi. So, to me, I mean, that was a brave thing to do, like to open a
Yeah, when
restaurant.
I look back on the younger man, I was 45 when I started Yo Sushi. There you go. If you're in your mid 40s and you're running out of time, that's a good place to be because it's a call to
Yeah,
action. Um, but yeah, I was in my mid 40s, and when I look back at that young man, me, I'm very proud of him. What he actually did, you know, he put himself right on the line. I had £200,000 tied up in my flat. I put everything on the line. I got a government loan guarantee scheme, matching it. I begged, borrowed, and stole. I didn't actually steal, but pretty close to get all the rest of it. And I built £1 million restaurant. We opened, and for the first 2 weeks, nobody came. And the second Saturday, we had a queue down the block.
amazing.
And
Yeah,
I'm very proud of the geezer, the guy who did it, who did all of that,
yeah,
And
yeah,
like sometimes, I actually sometimes wonder how I did do it. I'm not quite
yeah,
sure. And yeah, and I think as I said to you earlier on, and if it hadn't worked, whether I'd be able to pick myself up, dust myself off, and do it all over again. I think I
yeah.
would have done, but I don't really know the answer to that.
No, no, it's interesting those days. But I mean, you're very obviously very creative, very entrepreneurial, charismatic guy. I'm sure you would have done something else. But did you feel like it was a bit of a last roll of the dice? It was like, look, I've got to do something big to get
It
where
was definitely a roll of the dice. I
I'm
don't
at.
know if the last roll of the dice. It was definitely a roll of the dice, and I would say that if you're talking a single dice roll, I would say that I also got some lucky rolls. I'd have said that at least a couple of times I needed to throw a four or more.
Mhm,
To survive, and I did,
mhm.
and I came through it all. So
Yeah,
things can go wrong along the way, that is for sure.
yeah,
But you know, even when they go wrong, there's a way of recovering. I always
mm,
say, you get these what I call showstoppers. Certainly, or with restaurants, it would have been some kind of administrative thing from the government regulations or whatever it was, or health and safety or something. You can't have food going around on the conveyor belt for more than whatever, and or the fire. You can't have an open kitchen in the middle of a conveyor belt. Whatever it was, they were showstoppers. And I always say, when you get them, you have to act, but go round stone walls. Go round stone walls. Just because there's a stone wall there, there's always a way round the stone walls,
mhm, mhm,
and build golden bridges. Build
mhm,
golden bridges. Don't go, that's ridiculous. I've got a
mhm.
well, Gerard really. He was my partner for a long time in YOTEL, and he had a big thing. He used to go. We laugh about it now. He doesn't do it at all now. But if something like that came along, he'd go, "That is ridiculous," and of course that doesn't sound good to anybody.
Yeah, yeah. It might be
Yeah,
ridiculous, but it's not gonna fix the problem,
it's
is
not
it?
going to
So
help you exactly. So the words that you use to yourself and to other people are very important.
Yeah, no, definitely. So it's I was reading before that it's you've got like Yo Sushi's now 100 restaurants globally, maybe more around the
No,
world.
that it was Yo Sushi got up to 125 conveyor
Wow.
belt sushi bars at one time. It now has, they have less of those, but we around the world, but we now have, I think, nearly 500 outlets because we have our own staff and our
Hmm.
own making and everything in supermarkets around the
Mm.
world. And so, you know, it's a lot. I never thought that that's actually where we'd end up. I thought it was a restaurant business. Actually, it's
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
retailing as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I hadn't realized about the
it's
kiosks.
big. Yeah,
Yeah.
the kiosks. Yeah. I think there's 300. I don't know, 200, 300 Tesco's in the UK even that we have our own staff in making sushi, and yeah, they're very motivated, and they
Mhm.
definitely want to do a good job and really do high quality. So that's something I never planned.
No, it's a great success story for the UK in particular. I know it's international now, but so when you first started it, was the plan to have lots of restaurants around the country, or were you just focused on that one restaurant?
Well, look, as I say, um, I was focused on surviving. And I survived. And then one day, a year in, I got a call from a guy called Dominic Ford, who had done all the restaurants for Harvey Nichols and a lot of other things. He's kind of quite a well-known restaurateur. And he said, "We Harvey Nichols wants you to come and open on their fifth floor," which is a very cool, trendy place. It was about the time that, Joanna Lumley and Absolutely Fabulous was all happening, and we opened Yo Sushi on the top floor there, and it was rammed, packed, you know, with these high class ladies and all that stuff. And then I got a call from Selfridge's French guy who ran Selfridge's food hall, Jean Michel, I can't remember exactly, but Jean. He was a very nice guy, and he later went to Harrods, where we also opened one at one point, and and suddenly we were doing these. That was what was happening. So it. I didn't have it all planned out that we were going to do it, and then Robin Rowland, who was my operations director in those days, came on, and I got to the point as I've described, which is where I said, right, it's time to let go and let him. And
Hmm.
Robin took up and really took Yo out primarily into shopping malls around the UK.
Hmm.
Um, he did a good job at doing that.
Yeah, no, amazing. Well, after I think at the beginning I talked about how I'd heard you speaking at a Young Entrepreneur of the Year award where you were brilliant. But then I met you again a few years later, where it was the launch event for a Yo Sushi concession inside Phoenix department store
Phoenix in Newcastle.
in Newcastle. Yeah, but Newcastle now has its own Yo Sushi store, which is great to see. But yeah, I just remember. So was that part of the rollout? That was a big push to
Yeah,
get
that was part of it all, And
uh,
Fenix was the first one we did up there. That was a big department store. In fact, Mark Fennick, who's the guy who did it, he before he went off to run the family firm, and he ran Fenix for very many years. I think he still does. But I knew him because he was he was with, oh goodness, what was his name? Anyway, the guy who managed Robbie Williams for many years, recently deceased. Um, the two of them managed Roxy Music and King Crimson and a lot of the early bands, and I knew them from all of that. So I remember turning up with Go Sushi, and he went, "How come you got from there to here?" You know.
yeah, awesome. That's but you were
David Enthoven was his
all right.
partner.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
David Enthoven was Robbie Williams' manager.
Uh-huh.
David Williams. I've done a lot of different things in my life, and one of them is I made a record with the Blockheads. Remember, hit me
I've
with
been
my little
listening to it, so
silicon.
I'm enjoying it a lot. Yeah,
Yeah,
so yeah,
yeah.
it's very good.
I wrote it. There's the whole story, but you'll read about it in the book. But I wrote this song. And I remember um, uh, calling him and his accountant Kevin Healy, who was on my accountant for a little while, up on the call one day, and I'd sent them a copy of the CD. Made that tracks with the Blockheads, and they played it. And David was managing Robbie Williams, and And I said, "What do you reckon, David?" And he said, "I think you're a bit past your sell-by date." And they were in hysterics. And anyway, I did it, and it's out there, and it's and people download it and listen to it and sell it. It's called
Yeah,
"How I Got My Yo." How I Got My Yo on Spotify.
yeah. No, we'll put a
Anyway,
link.
David, I always said to David, all you know is about boy bands, man. You know, you don't know about mature artists, people like me. So another
So
round of laughter.
when did you do that? Was like what stage did you put that out? Because I have been listening to
I
it. It
don't
is
know. About 10 years ago, I made that with
10 years ago.
it was actually soon after Ian Dury died, and the
Yeah,
Blockheads were an incredible band. I mean, a really
yeah,
incredible band. Like those
mhm,
guys from way back, and I'd worked with them. And actually, I remember thinking, because I haven't got a very tuneful voice, and I remember thinking, um, I could write a song like that, you know, it's a musical type song like Ian Dury's songs were. And I wrote this song called "How I Got My Yo." You never got
mhm.
to O until I found my yo. I hope you find your doorway so that yo can too. And I sent the lyrics off to Chaz Jankel, who'd written all the songs for Ian Dury, who had written the music anyway. Ian was the wordsmith. And and he didn't call back for ages. And then one day, I didn't really know him, and then one day he called me out of the blue, and he said, "Look," he said, I'm going to have a go at this. Since Ian died, I haven't really done much, but he said, I'm going to have a go at this." And he called me back. Another 3 months went past. He called me back and he played me this track on his keyboard, him
Amazing.
singing. And I was I remember I was in Tesco's where I lived in the country, in the fruit and veg aisle, and I was listening to this thing, and I went, "It just sounds like the Blockheads." And he said, "Yeah, well, it would do, wouldn't it?" He said, "I wrote it." And anyway, within a couple of months, I was in the studio in Lots Road, in the edge of Chelsea, where Ian Dury and the Blockheads had made new boots and panties and all of that with the same engineer and all of the band. And beyond my wildest dreams, I was the lead singer of my favorite group. I
Yeah,
mean,
no,
just from
amazing.
that one seed that I'd sown.
Uh-huh.
And
I
yeah,
think
so that
that's a
was
good
very good.
example of well, it is good. Like yeah, it's not. I'm not just saying it. It is good. It sounds good, but the lyrics are clever as well. But it's just an example of just putting an idea out there and running with it and what.
Yeah, and exactly. And not, you know, because I could have been really slated for that, you know,
Yeah.
who the hell do you are and all of that stuff. But I did it with good spirit and I wasn't ashamed of it and I wasn't embarrassed. And I thought, to hell with it, you know, that's just what I want to do. And I
Mhm.
think that's just what I want to do is such a good thing if you can get away. I think it's a shame in its widest form, embarrassment. What will people think? Do people like me? All of that business. Yeah, that can hold us back as much as anything can. And
Yeah.
if you can just practice of saying, well, I'm going to do it anyway, to hell with it.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Only live once.
And having fun as well along the way, which I think you clearly
If
do
you
that.
can, yeah.
Yeah,
Try to
you've
have
had
some
fun
fun,
doing
yeah.
it, and but it fits with your creative spirit, your entrepreneurial creative spirit. So it's just
Which,
part
of
of who you
course,
are.
my creative spirit came from leaving school young because I
Yeah.
didn't have the the creativity knocked out of me. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, you know, the education system is changing in the UK and you know around the world actually because we're you know actually the future to get out of the difficulties that we're in the West at the moment
Mm-hmm.
is long-term education. And you know, reading, writing, arithmetic is really important to be able to do, but all
Mm-hmm.
the rest of it, it's here instantly. So the
Yeah.
rest of it is how to be a good person, how to learn, how to be do all the things that we're talking about on this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
on this transition. You know, that's the stuff to learn in school. And I think that will happen more and more. And certainly even AI is teaching all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think education is the big change that will happen and will bring us out. But it's going to take 10, 20, 30 years. And having a government that changes every 4 years, or in our case, every 2 years,
Yeah. It's not,
isn't a good route to success.
no.
I think I personally believe that eventually, well, I don't get too political here, but I do believe that eventually we will have a very small executive, not this enormous parliament with people arguing with each other. Executive people like they do in Switzerland or Singapore who execute the people. And the will of the people become obvious once we have digital voting and you realize that people can vote for issues rather than political parties.
No,
So anyway, that's
yeah, no, I think you're right. It's interesting times, definitely. Yeah.
I think something will change. The pendulum, when things get difficult like they are now, the pendulum always has to swing too far before it can swing back again.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Uh-huh.
We'll see, as my mum used to say.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, I've said to we've got 4 kids between us, and they're a bit like shocked by what's recently happened in the UK with some of the local elections, and I've said to them, look, just wait and see, like just see what happens, because you can't predict anything when it comes to politics, and you just got to crack on and just stay the course, do what you believe in,
and actually ignore it and get on, because
it's a distraction. It is a distraction for a lot of people.
Yeah, but Britain is an entrepreneurial country. We're no longer a nation of shopkeepers. We're a nation of entrepreneurs. And actually, it's our job to get on and do something in spite of government. In spite of government, and actually to put up our flags and say, no, we don't want this. We're going to do this anyway. We're this very creative country. We have been throughout the age. If you'd had a spaceman, an alien land on Earth and say, where's all this action been happening in the past 1,000 years? And you say this little island in the top right-hand corner of the Atlantic, you wouldn't have believed it. But we're an incredible nation, and actually, love it or hate it, the one thing that Brexit has done is to give us the opportunity to reinvent ourselves, as I've done, but to reinvent ourselves as an example for the world about how to govern a successful country, and how to get the entrepreneurial spirit right through corporations and everything. And I think that is the really big opportunity. But the political parties arguing constantly, it doesn't work.
No, not at all.
Something's got to break. Something's got to change.
I definitely feel like I've noticed recently, actually, there's definitely a lot more entrepreneurs being a lot more outspoken recently on social media in particular, and I think that's a good thing. I think the business leaders should be
We should all stand up and say what we think, and actually be the ones that express bold views for bold change. And when I do speeches, or when I talk to people and I talk about some of the things I've just been talking to you in the last 10 minutes, a lot of nodding heads and people going, it doesn't make sense. We don't want to watch these people arguing with each other all day. Thousands of people in Parliament, most of those people, professional politicians, the people at the top are pretty smart, but most of them in the middle, I wouldn't employ most of them, to be quite honest. And they're not. They haven't really got that nous, and so having our future with them does not make sense. As does, and what doesn't make sense either is trying to control everything from the top. It's too complicated in this day and age. It's too complicated, and it's too bossy. As David Hockney always has this little badge on these days, and it says "Stop bossing us now," and that is true. Stop bossing us.
It's still
the will of the people.
Definitely too top down, and too centralized as well. Too much from.
They're trying to teach. The government are trying to tell people what they should teach in classrooms. Teachers and head teachers should teach to their local community what their local community needs. Hospitals should administer to their local community what those people need.
No, I totally. I agree with everything you've said there. So good, and I like it that you and others are starting to be. I mean, I'm sure you have been already, but speak out a bit more. And I'm really enjoying all the videos that you're putting out on social media as well. I think it's excellent on Instagram and TikTok as well. I think and YouTube. But I've just been consuming lots of your videos on Instagram and TikTok, and great words of advice on there as well as in this interview today. So thank you for doing that.
Absolute pleasure. Well, this advice word, I'm always very wary about it. All I can ever do, I try to be very careful not to give out too much advice, but to just tell people what happened to me, what I learned along the way. And if people want to nick those ideas or do it, that's up to them. But I'm not telling you what you should do. I suppose I do a bit. I suppose I do.
Yeah.
But I try. Because
No.
unsolicited advice is not great advice. You know, the best thing is to say less and then for people to say, tell me more. That's the
Yeah.
words you're always listening to one-on-one is tell me more. And then you've got their ear. That's why I don't believe in elevator pitches. Get to know people over a
Mm.
period of
Mhm. I think that's why interviews like this are really good, because people can get to know you better than if it was just a quick soundbite or a short videos are good and sort of getting people's attention. You are very good at the short videos, but the longer ones like this and the podcast, you get to understand someone at a deeper level, and even at an even deeper level. Definitely encourage people again to get Your Man, which is a brilliant book. It's out on the 4th of June, but you can order a copy now, and there's going to be links underneath this as well. Are you back in the
Oh,
UK?
thank you, Paul. He says unashamedly promoting my book, and it's out on audio as well, by the way. He says.
Yeah, no, it's great. Are you going to be back in? You're going to be back in the UK next
Yeah,
month,
I'm
June?
going to be in most of June. I'm going to be in the UK, and then I'm going to be in the UK in September as well. And as usual, up at Ideas Fest, which is the
Yeah,
Glastonbury of business ideas in a field, which is fantastic, and doing lots of signings and events and things. So you're going to be sick and tired of me, no doubt. But I'll just do my best to make it fun.
yeah, no, definitely. Well, the Yo Man, you're definitely very good at that. So no, thank you, Simon. Really appreciate you doing this today. There's lots of comments have been coming through, so I'll respond to them, and maybe you and your team can respond to them as well on LinkedIn as well. But thank you, and yeah, thanks for doing the book as well. I'm really enjoying it.
No, absolute pleasure. And I'll finish to tell you that when I was knocking on people's doors, I always promised that if I ever got to be the one that people were knocking on my doors, I'd always respond. And so far, I've been able to always respond to people. But
Yeah, no, you were great. I'd really appreciate how quickly
that's
you
it.
came back to me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
See you later, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye. Cheers.